wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fouad Kassab. Welcome to A Quirky Journey. Join us as we share our family's journeys to good health. You'll find plenty of inspiration, tips and recipe ideas, as well as stories from everyday people who've struggled and overcome health problems and diet challenges in their own families. I'm Jo Whitten, and I have with me my co-host, Fouad Kassab. Hi, Fouad.
Hi. Hello, Jo. How are you?
I'm good. And today we're going to have a chat to Melissa Stainwald, who is the author of the Keep in Mind project. Hi, Melissa.
Good morning.
And
morning.
We're going
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to hear your story. It's fascinating. I know that a lot of you were interested in the last podcast we had with Kelly Brogan, Dr. Kelly Brogan, on depression and natural methods of healing. So today we're sort of taking it a step further and listening into Melissa's story, which is, very fascinating. I'll just give you a little bit...
I'll just have to go in a little bit here and let people know that when Jo discovered Melissa's website, I started getting bombarded by links and extreme excitement. And
read this.
Jo just
have you read
this? You've got to read that. Look what you said.
Have you read it yet?
Yeah. So I was like, Jo, please. I can only read at a certain pace. I don't. She was reading 3 blog posts at the same time. I didn't even understand how she was doing it. So Jo is very, very excited to have you here, and so am I, Melissa.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute honour. I love the work that you guys are doing. It's fantastic how you're just empowering all of us out here just to strive for better. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Had you heard our podcast before I contacted you?
Yes, I had. And I found you just by Googling, grain-free cake or,
chocolate.
So I can't believe
by the way, everybody, excuse my voice. I'm still a bit croaky from the Mind Forum. I think I talk too much. Okay. All right, let me just give a little bit of an intro to Melissa for those of you who have no idea who Melissa is. You soon will. Okay, so I found Melissa's blog a few weeks ago. Someone shared a link on Facebook to her story, and as you do, you just go, oh, that looks interesting, clicked on it, and I was absolutely mesmerised by her story. It was awful and amazing and wonderful and gut-wrenching and inspirational all in one. And I commented on her blog and said, thank you so much for sharing the story. I think that this will help a lot of people. And she got in contact with me. So we ended up talking on the phone for ages. And, we just felt like kindred spirits, didn't we, Melissa?
Yes, we did. Absolutely. So much in common. It was crazy.
Yeah. So I said to her, would you be willing to share your story on the podcast? And she's a bit nervous about it, but we're telling her that we're all very nice people. So
don't judge me.
So as you all probably know, working through depression and anxiety naturally is something that I'm really interested in because of our own experiences with Isaac and my other son, Simeon. And also just because I get so many questions from people and emails from readers and messages with kids or parents struggling with depression and anxiety, and it's just become such a major issue in our society. And some have had to go onto medication, some are trying to work through it naturally. But really the thing that I think I really just want to bring out the most is that there's so much that you can work through naturally. And that's what Kelly really made us aware of in her interview and also at the Mind Forum. And I just read one of her articles this morning, actually, 4 things that you really need to look into before you go on to medication. Or if you're already on it, 4 things that you need to just work through. And it's all very simple, natural things that can make such a big difference. There is things that you can do. And I would really love for Melissa to share with us what she's learned along the way. So maybe, Melissa, you could just start a little bit about telling us about your blog and why you started it.
Yeah, I guess the reason I started it was I know how desperately alone you can feel when you're going through these these sorts of journeys, it's extremely isolating when you can't leave the house, you can't leave your bed, and friends and family don't have a clue what's going on, and it's not their fault. Yeah. I wouldn't have had a clue either. If you asked me, 15 years ago before this hit my life, I would have said some pretty dumb things to people too because I didn't get it. And so it's very isolating, and so I just wanted to kind of create a place where maybe we could connect with each other, and someone might just feel a little bit of support. I didn't anticipate, I just thought maybe one person might read it. And another part of me starting the blog was one of the things that kept me alive, to be honest, or kept me trying each day and keep pushing through was I just, regardless how unwell I was, I always had a belief that there's purpose. And regardless of what I was going through in the hell, I just had this little, inkling light that kept going, saying there is purpose in the pain. And quite often I'd get to the point of wanting to quit, and then I'd think, no, I'm going to miss out on finding the purpose in this, and that's not fair. I've worked too hard to miss out on that. So, I just really it was a way to go, to create something that gave purpose to the hell, I guess. Yeah. So that's what made me start.
That's good. How long ago did you start the blog?
I think it might have been about February this year. Yeah. Yep. Early this year, yeah.
There's just so many great articles on there. Once I started reading, I just wanted to read them all. You're a very good writer. So you'll have to tell us about your next project too at the end, so don't forget that.
Oh, okay, yes. It's been a beautiful experience. I was a little bit frightened to start, when you've been hidden away for so long too, you haven't been out in the community, you haven't really felt like you've been very productive apart from surviving. Yeah. It's frightening to put yourself out there and to kind of creep back out into the world, but to be honest, it's been a beautiful thing. And so those of you who are out there who are thinking, it's all over and you can never start associating again or getting out there, it's a beautiful thing, and there's some wonderful people out there who do actually want to support you. So, yeah.
That's good. Did you have any questions about that, Fouad?
No, I'm just looking forward to hearing a bit more about Melissa's story and where she's come from and what drove her, and all the things that I've read. I would love for her to share that. So, Melissa, I'd love for you to tell our audience about all the things that you went through.
Yeah, how it all began.
Okie dokie. All right, well, I'll try to make it as quick as I can.
No need. You can take a bit of time. You can get into some detail.
Okay.
We'll interrupt if we have questions.
Okay, all right, that's perfect. All right, so I guess my journey, or this past journey, started 14 years ago. It was after the birth of my last beautiful little baby. He was about 3 months old, and I just began to feel exhausted, and I felt this extreme tiredness that I'd never felt before. And, it was more than just that I've got a newborn baby kind of tiredness. I knew what that felt like. This was my third child. This was my fifth pregnancy. And so I just knew something had shifted, and I was different, and I was highly irritable and just unable to cope with things that I'd normally breeze through. And I was an emotional mess, and just not coping like I normally would. And my poor husband didn't know what to do with me, and, my family was starting to notice, and, I was just not myself. And so hubby took me off to the GP. Where else do you go? So I was a GP that I'd been seeing for 10 years, and not that we saw him often. I was extremely healthy and really had no need for any medicine or anything before that, except for having babies, really. So anyway, off to the GP, and after about a 15-minute chat, he was sure and diagnosed me with postnatal depression. He told me I had a chemical imbalance in my brain. How he knew this, I have no idea, because there was no tests, there was no physical examinations, or, he made no inquiries into hormone levels, nutrition, sleep, or any other part of my general health. he just, after 15 minutes said to me, "Come on, Melissa, if you want to be a good mum, you're going to have to take antidepressants."
That's heavy.
Yeah, it's a heavy statement, isn't it? And, I didn't know anything about mental illness. I didn't know anything about antidepressants. But what shook me and broke my heart a little was he said to me, "You'll have to stop breastfeeding to take these antidepressants." And I adored breastfeeding, and I adored just being a mum. It was really what I felt I was called to do. So I said, okay, I need to get my head around this, and I went home, and there was no way I could take these medication with, and breastfeed, and it devastated me. And I guess in the end, that my energy I was not getting any better, and my doctor, again said to me, "Melissa, you have to do this for your family." I trusted my doctor. I trusted he would never recommend anything that would bring me harm, and he offered me no other alternatives. This was the only, option for me. My children were my world. So, yes, I wanted to be a good mum, so I took the drugs, and the medication, it did not improve my exhaustion or my mental state. So back to the doctor, he increased my dose. Still there was no positive results, so he increased my dose again. And, my mood did improve a little, but then what happened next, I could never have imagined. I never imagined that my choice to follow doctor's orders would result in just such heartbreak and chaos. So what happened was I had what doctors refer to as a manic episode. I started behaving extremely out of character, like I'm talking, crazy lady stuff you see on movies. It was horrific, and I was erratic, I was angry, I had uncontrollable agitation. I morphed into someone else, and sometimes that would lead into complete psychosis. When I was manic, I didn't need sleep. Sometimes I'd go for 5 days without needing any sleep, and I was not tired. I was amped, and I was looking for adventure in some really inappropriate ways. And then from this mania, then I would crash into a deep depression where all I could think about was how I could die. I could not get those thoughts no matter how hard I tried. I tried, prayer and positive thinking, but there was this constant thought of wanting to die, and I would actually see opportunities everywhere of how I could do that. And, it was horrible. And this was not me. This was not who I ever had. I've never felt this way. I've never thought about death. I was a vibrant dance teacher. I was a lover of life. This was extremely
out of character.
A huge, and so anyway, I got to the point where each day I didn't know, my family didn't know what it would bring. I couldn't control this cycle. It just cycled up and down and all over the place. So in despair, hubby took me back to the doctor and told him what was happening, and that, I was behaving really erratic. And so then he diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. Yeah. So apparently now I didn't have postnatal depression after all. Now I had a genetic illness, bipolar. And I was told, there was no cure and that I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. So then I was referred then onto a psychiatrist who gave me a mix of drugs to try. And the side effects were horrific of the medication. I became a zombie.
Did you find it calmed down your anger and manic episodes but made you really zombie-like? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So what happens, if you're in a psychosis, and if you take an antipsychotic medication, it certainly knocks that out. It knocks everything out. It knocks all joy. So now you're not only manic and crazy, but you can't feel joy. I could intellectually tell myself this should be a nice day. I'm having a nice time. But to feel it was impossible.
Okay.
Yeah. So, my kids would have to shake me in the mornings to try and wake me, and they were little then, and sometimes they couldn't. Yeah.
Was your husband going to work at this time and you were at home with the kids? Or?
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't a month, 2 months, this was years. Yeah. So someone has to pay the bills, and husbands have to go to work, and somehow, these poor mums out there who are in my situation have to try and survive, and the children have to try and survive, and it's something that's not really talked about much, but my kids couldn't wake me some mornings and they would miss school. Yeah. And, I've had times where they've actually put me back to bed and said, Mum, it's okay, we've got this sorted. We know, don't answer the door, don't do, And, it was a tough time. But, yeah, the medication just, the effects of the meds I was never informed about. My bowels shut down, just physical things that happened to you. I had tremors. My body bloated with fluid. I was just puffy. My mum used to say to me, "You're just changing, like you look different." And I craved carbohydrates. I couldn't sleep, so I'd started the drugs, and now I couldn't sleep. So sometimes they can create other disorders. So then I needed more drugs to help me sleep. But then once you are asleep, you can't wake. So there was no way I could have had a job or work. I was barely able to just, do basic functioning. How I drove the kids around and the amount of car accidents we almost had from my muddled thinking, where I would get confused at traffic lights, and, it was impossible to maintain any friendships. We were completely isolated and very alone. It was a bit of a mess. So,
did your parents? Were your parents close by at the time? Were they helping out a bit, or?
Yeah, they tried. My mum's not well, so it was hard for her. They did everything they could. But they were baffled, and even my mum says now, I just didn't know, and I didn't know what to do, and then I would be so erratic. My husband would say, "Don't visit her," but yet, and that's something that needs to be talked about too, when family needs to just go, "Tough bickies, I'm coming."
Yeah, that's right.
Because the mind tells you, I can't cope, I don't want anyone here, but sometimes you need someone to just open the door, say, right, okay, I'm walking you outside and you're going to sit in the sun today. Yeah. So in hindsight, my parents, they did the best they could. We all were doing the best they could. But, yeah, it was a lonely time. Yes, it kind of breaks my heart just to even think back on what our poor little family went through. But, what's worse is that none of the medications actually helped my initial symptoms. Instead, now I had a whole bunch more. And my doctor's answer to, why the drugs weren't helping me was that, Melissa, you have treatment-resistant depression. And so he said, you're going to have ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy. He said to me, it's really your only option. And let me tell you, it's horrible. I hated it. I straight away get a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach just thinking about it. But, yes, I had close to 50 of those over the years. And I was still sick. And I would often challenge my psychiatrist. Now my psychiatrist was a lovely man, and sometimes because I was so isolated, he was kind of my only social, and he was my only connection with the outside world because, I would be driven to the psych. So he was a lovely man, and I believe he wanted me to be well, and he was doing the best with his information that he had, but I would challenge him, and, because I'd tried every class of psychiatric medication. I'd done the antidepressants, antipsychotics, the mood stabilizers, the benzos, and I never got any better. So he just said, you're treatment resistant. And so basically it was my body's fault that the treatment wasn't working, and he never once questioned his treatment or his diagnosis. Yeah, and I knew in my heart that something wasn't right. I knew this wasn't the answer. but I didn't know where to turn. I had no idea, and little amount of energy and brain function, to be honest. And so I tried my best, and with my poor little fried brain, I began to research just a little bit and looking for alternatives. And, I would print this research out and I would take it to my psych, and what about this and what about amino acids? And he would laugh and he'd scoff and he'd say, Melissa, that's just quackery. So then that went on forever. And so in 2013, I found myself on a cocktail of 5 different medications, but was still extremely ill. My psych wanted to add one more to the mix called Cymbalta. And I can't explain it to you, but my spirit knew that I wasn't to take this medication. And I just had this inner voice saying, no, Melissa. And every week he would tell me, Melissa, you have to start taking this drug. You're sick. You have to, you're not getting better. And every week I would say no, and he was very annoyed with me. And, I stood up to him for as long as I tried to, and went on for weeks, actually over a month, and I was really sick. And eventually he wore me down, and stupidly I took the Cymbalta, and within weeks it sent me into a mania again, where I didn't sleep for a week this time. And I was doing all sorts of crazy things, like I was just painting crazy paintings all night, and then I wanted to party, and then I went and sanded 50 square metres of wooden floor on my own with a hand sander one night. Like, I was amped, and it was crazy. But then it went from just me having all this energy and not needing to sleep and all these ideas, and then it went into psychosis, and it became life-threatening, and it was dangerous. And that's when I said enough. And I said, I wanted to get off the drugs. I just, it was breaking point. I mean, I'd been at breaking point for years, but this was it. When your husband has to hold you down from trying to run and lay on a road. And I got to the point I didn't care who agreed with me. I wanted out, I wanted off this medication train. And, I'd done everything to a T to what the doctors had told me for 12 years. I gave it a good go. And I was just getting sicker and sicker, and I couldn't live that way anymore. Death was this constant thought. And I just wanted to escape the pain. I didn't want to die. That's the funny thing. You're thinking about death, but I had a beautiful life outside of my illness. I just couldn't get to that life. And, so it wasn't that I wanted to die. I just couldn't live like that. And I had to start listening to that inner voice. And so I told my psychiatrist my plan to get off meds. And surprise, surprise, he was against it. My husband and parents, they too were frightened at the thought, but they knew how sick I was, and they were afraid. And here I want to make it really clear that I was in no way flippant about this decision to come off medication. I knew that coming off these meds was going to be tough. It was potentially very dangerous. And so I made sure that I did it under full medical supervision. I did it very slowly. I did it cautiously, slowly weaning one drug at a time. It took me 5 months to get off all the medication, and, let me tell you, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It really was hell. For months, I suffered there was nausea. I'd spontaneously just vomit. I'd be driving the car, and with no warning I would just vomit. It was horrible. I had diarrhea for months. I had abscess-like acne, nightmares. I had hallucinations. Oh gosh, it goes on. Dizziness, heart palpitations. And a constant thought during this time of suicide. Constant. It was just lingering over me all the time, and I had irritation. I was hospitalised twice, during this 5-month withdrawal period. And that was really tough because none of the staff, none of the nurses or doctors approved of what I was doing, nor did they support it. They were very encouraging that if I just start taking the meds, everything would go back to normal, what they call normal. I didn't want that normal anymore. I was done. Yeah, so I'd been completely drug-free for about 2 months and still in really chronic withdrawal. And, yeah, I was so sick, and this was a concern to my doctor. He really did care about me, but limited with what resources he had to offer me. And so he ended up giving me a bit of an ultimatum, 3 options. I could start back on the medication, or I could be admitted involuntarily into a public hospital. You see, psychiatrists have the power to involuntarily admit you into a hospital, into a locked ward. Wow. And if this happens, that means they can medicate you against your will.
Wow.
So then my third option he gave me was more ECT treatments. And, none of these options were ideal for me, or I wanted any of them. He was picking, the lesser of 3 evils, and there was no way after all that hard work that I was going back on medication, after 7 months of grueling fighting. So I agreed to more ECT treatments. So I was booked in to have 12 treatments. So that's 12, they do that over a month. You have 3 treatments a week. So that's 12 general anaesthetics and 12 grand mal seizures I would be given in a month. And that's a lot when your body's already so weak and functioning at a very minimal level. And, my body was so tired. Anyway, I started treatments, and after my 4th treatment, I woke up with a nurse beside me, and she was telling me, Melissa, we're going to transfer you to the medical ward because we're really concerned that you've had a mild stroke during this treatment. Wow. Your seizure went too long, and they had trouble stopping it. My blood pressure had dropped dangerously low, so they were sending me to the medical ward to monitor me so that they get my blood pressure back up so that I'd be ready for my next treatment in 2 days. It's just mental. Excuse the pun. So I was laying there and I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. I mumble, if anything, and I was terrified. Listening to what she was telling me, I was afraid for my life and petrified. But fortunately, hooray, my dad came and he rescued me, and he discharged me from hospital. He had to sign a waiver that he was taking me against medical advice, and we left the hospital that day, and it's been a huge slog, a massive slog since then. But, the fabulous news is that I'm still here and I'm flourishing, and I'm super excited, and I just want those listening out there to know, regardless of what your situation, whether you're still on the meds or trying to get off or whatever, that there is always hope. And I did it, so can you, whatever the challenge is. And I'm really excited because I just recently had my 2-year anniversary of being drug-free. Wow. So I've got my mind back, and I can't tell you how wonderful it feels to start to feel like me again after so long. Yeah, so that's kind of it.
Such a big story. With the way that you were thinking during the time you were on medication and the way that you're thinking now, what would the difference be in your mind?
Okay. Yeah, well, I've always been grown up with a great surrounding of positive, I was taught positive affirmations as a child. I even while I was sick, I was always educating myself and reading about how to cope with anxiety and how to cope with depression, and, just things that you could do, cognitive behavioural therapy. But what I found when I was so drugged, I couldn't implement those things. And no matter how hard I tried, I had no power. And now, of course, I've got a lot of habits to break after being in that world for so long. And so I'll still get the anxiety and I'll still feel, panic and things come upon me. But now I've got power over my mind, and so I've got power to think things through and to say, no, hang on, Melissa, that's not the truth. The facts might be saying one thing, but the truth is, no, you're stronger and you can do this. And so that was a big difference that I found.
Wow.
Oh, Melissa, what a story. I was just gobsmacked. Wow. So during the journey of getting off the meds, were there any other lifestyle changes that you made? Did you work on your sleep or being in nature or the way that you ate? Was there any complementary thing, or did just simply getting off the meds restore you back to being normal?
No, it's not that simple, unfortunately. So what's amazing is once you start listening to that inner voice and start stepping out, even little tiny steps, you find that doors open. Mm-hmm. And I left that hospital that day and we had no idea of where to turn. Like, I was sick. We didn't know whether we needed to get, a nurse to come in every day to look after me. What would we do? And, because I was still sick. I left that hospital, but I was ill. And so, we looked into all these different treatment plans, and let me tell you, if someone's promising a treatment that they're going to cure you in a month, then
it's not going to happen.
They're telling fibs, okay? So we looked, there was places that we could go and spend $40,000 for a month, and we would have done it, but I just kept listening to that voice and saying, okay, where am I supposed to go? And because my brain wasn't working, so I had to listen to my spirit. And anyway, I went to a place called Living Valley, and I went there for a week. And whilst, they didn't make me better, it opened doors. And eventually I got led, just by constantly opening doors and following, where I felt I should go. I found this amazing doctor, and that didn't happen so quick. Like, I was always researching, and I actually sent an email over to America to a Dr. Hyla Cass, who's this really well-known person, and I never expected to hear back from her, but she emailed me back and she helped me find a doctor also here in Australia. So you've just got to ask, and you'd be surprised who's willing to actually help you. And so the first thing that I changed was I went on the GAPS diet. And because you can't do everything at once, and my body was so sick, and so I started from scratch on that, like from the very, the introduction diet on the broth, and wow, it made me sick. And I was just passing out. I was, stuff that was coming out of me was not nice, and so I started with the GAPS diet, and
did you have help with that?
Pardon?
Did you have help with that, like a GAPS practitioner helping you, or how did you?
Not a GAPS practitioner, but this doctor I found, he's the one who actually said to me, unless you do this, I can't really help you.
Wow.
And he said, we got to start there, and that's the only. Start there, and then we can move on to other things. But until you heal your gut, until you start to heal your body, we can't move on. So he was really firm about that, and I was like, I'll try. And he was like, it's going to be tough. And I was like, are you kidding? It's going to be tougher than what I'm
I'll just mention here too, for people that are thinking of trying the GAPS diet for major detoxing, you do have to go very slowly at first if you're in a situation like Melissa was, because it can be... You can detox too fast, and it can be too much for your body to handle. But go slow.
100%.
Like as in slow, as in one drop of broth at first. That's
I didn't think. I thought it was a bit of a joke, because he's sort of saying to me, "This can be really powerful," and I was like,
"How can having broth be powerful?"
I thought he was a bit. I was like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't. I guess when you're so critically ill, maybe if a semi-healthy person, but when you are in a state of, such unwellness. So he was amazing actually. When I went to him and told him my story, and I said, I actually took a list of the drugs I'd just come off, and I gave them to him, and I said, here's a list of the medications I've come off, and he was like, this is what you're taking, and I said, no, I've come off them, and he just looked at me and said, "How did you do that?"
Yeah,
and he said, "This is worse than coming off heroin. This is, amazing."
Dr. Brogan was saying that they're the most addictive drugs that she's aware of.
Yeah, much more so than heroin. Yeah.
That's right.
And where's the support? If I was coming off heroin and went to a detox centre, the support there is, no turning back, and yet when I went to detox off my psychiatric medication, I was being told every day, "Melissa, just take the meds and this will go away." That there's not that same support, but yet we're going through the same, withdrawals, but the support is not there at all.
Mm.
Yeah, so I told him my story, and he actually, this was quite healing for me. He sat there and said to me, "Melissa, on behalf of all of my medical colleagues, I want to apologise." And it was quite a beautiful moment. But, so from there, the first changes I noticed, was sleep. When I started the GAPS diet and started going to that, I was so excited because I went to bed and I laid down and I went to sleep.
Yeah.
And then the sun came out and I woke up and it was amazing.
Someone just said that on my my gut health program group, the private group. She's just started GAPS. She hasn't slept well for years. She said, "I never sleep through the night." Within 4 days, she was sleeping through the night.
How is it it still blows my mind.
It blows my mind too. She just can't believe it. Same thing. She's like, "I wake up and it's like the sun's out." And I'm like, "What?"
I can give you a little hint there what happens. So,
yes.
You know how we work on, say, the circadian rhythm. So our body knows that it's daytime because of the blue light. And so if we have too much blue light exposure at night, our sleep is disrupted, and that's why crazy people like me wear blue blocker glasses at night so that we don't actually experience that. But what happens is not all our organs actually work on this kind of stimulus. So, for instance, our pancreas knows that it's daytime due to the presence of carbohydrates in our diet. Mm-hmm. So if, for instance, we eat carbohydrates late at night, our pancreas will still think that it's daytime. Oh. So part of our body is still thinking that it's daytime. So we get this kind of really problematic sleep issue. But on GAPS, because it's especially the introductory phase, it is like zero cal. So your whole body clock starts resetting itself, and of course, after that, all the detoxification and taking off all the crap that your body has to deal with and giving it a bit of a break, so it can actually sleep and heal rather than sort of fight off inflammation and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, but that's a really interesting thing, how our bodies, different organs, respond to different stimuli. And I think I've had the same thing when I've started eating a lower carb diet. My sleep improved just dramatically. And then if you eat carbohydrates at night, then you feel sleep disruption because your body still partially thinks that it's still daytime.
So really, carbs should be early in the day then.
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing. Yeah, we were so excited. My kids were excited. People on the outside would have thought, what's the big deal? But it was such a joy for them that I would be up before them in the mornings, and I'd be having breakfast with my family, and it really was a joy for us. Yeah. So the next thing I noticed, and sorry to be gross, but we all do it, was I could poo.
That's quite a major need in our lives.
I know, and that can make you really sick. When I was on the meds, I was lucky to go twice a week, and psychiatric medications, they cause havoc on your whole metabolism and digestive system, and so that was amazing to go every day. Was again, an amazing observation that things were happening, things were changing in my body, and I was becoming, healthier. And, so, it was just it doesn't happen fast. You've got to realise this is not going to be a quick fix, but you will get these little rewards along the way, and that are going to go, okay, I'm going to keep going because this is good. Pardon?
It gives you some hope. You know, you're making progress.
Yeah, and hope's something you really kind of, it's hard to hold on to when, when your doctor's sitting there going, you know what, you've tried it all. We're really running out of options for you. And he used to be frustrated as well, going, well, you've tried every drug. Let's give this another go. And so hope is something you lose. And hope was something I started to gain back once I started to, on the gaps, and then I introduced, some supplements. And I think it's really important when you're going through such, climbing out of a health crisis, is to do it slow and not introduce 5,000 things at once. We could all just go and go, well, I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the chiropractor and I'm going to start the GAPS diet and I'm going to start meditation, I'm going to start, whatever.
Everything at once.
And and then how do you know which one was really working for you? So starting supplements, amino acids was the first thing that I introduced, and I did that slowly so I could find out, what really helped me, what made me tired, what picked me up. And it was just a really slow, frustrating process, but so worth it.
And so your doctor helped you figure out what supplements you needed and stuff.
Yeah, I think finding the right support, finding the right doctor is amazing. Like, we were so skeptical when we turned up to this guy. My dad came with me. My dad came in and he was sort of saying, all these hopeful things. And my dad said, listen, buddy, we've heard it all before. Yeah. And what changed in our thinking is we went to the health practitioner knowing what we wanted, and this was a total shift for me. I went in there and I said to him, because I'd already researched on amino acids and NAC, and because I'd been to my psych about the use of NAC for bipolar, which is N-acetylcysteine. There's studies being done at Deakin University using it for bipolar, but anyway, that wasn't enough for my psych. But so I went in there and I said, this is what I want to try, this is where I want to go, and this is how I want to do it. Are you willing to support me in that? And we knew that if he wasn't, we were going to keep going and we would find someone who would. And fortunately, we hit the jackpot and he was right on board.
Just on that, Joe and I have finished a huge weekend at the Mind Forum this weekend, and they have actually on their website a list of practitioners that deal with holistic health, and it's quite a comprehensive list. So if anyone is looking at finding a local practitioner, I think it's mind.org, so mind.org, and you'll be able to go there and look for a practitioner in your area that might be able to help you go through this journey as well if you need it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, because you don't know where to go. And
well, these are definitely people who have been involved in this kind of world for a while, and they have all the right ideas, and they've supported a lot of people through their health journeys. So definitely worth looking into that list if you're dealing with these issues, or if you know someone who's dealing with them.
Yeah. So so kind of where I'm at now with my health is my mental health is just absolutely fantastic, and I'm jumping ahead in leaps and bounds, and it's just a beautiful thing. So what happened though is after I started getting quite well and still suffering a fair bit, but I felt like maybe the next choice for me would be to introduce exercise. And so I slowly introduced exercise, and I was finding I would exercise and then I would be in bed. That would be all I would do that day. But I really knew that there was great evidence that exercise, for mental health, it's better than antidepressants. It actually has better or just as good as clinical studies come up with just as good a result. So
what kind of exercise were you doing at first?
So I started, very simple to start with. But then I increased it, and then, the 80s dance teacher, and the dance chick came into me like, no pain, no gain. So I went really hard, and I went too hard, and I ended up collapsing, and I was in bed, couldn't move for a month.
Yeah.
And
wow.
You'll have to start slowly with that one.
Yeah, so I got really sick, and it wasn't a foreign feeling for me. It was feelings that I have actually had for a very long time, that kind of exhaustion. And I would have that exhaustion after I worked out. I would have that exhaustion for a day or two. But after I actually took up this 30-day challenge where you had to exercise hard every day. And after that, I was in bed. And I was actually working with a lady, a trainer who specialises in people with mental health. And so she was waiting for me to get that kick and to have that turnaround. And she was like, this should be happening for you by now. And it just wasn't happening. Like, my mental health was good, but physically she was like, you should not be going home to bed all day. You should not be in bed for 2 days after working out. And she actually got me thinking and said, Melissa, I think there's something else going on here. This isn't just mental health. So she really encouraged me to do some investigations, and then I was told, I was sent to a chronic fatigue specialist, and he said, I have no doubt you have chronic fatigue and you probably had it for a very long time. And I doubt, and I had a couple of doctors say, I doubt you ever had bipolar. It sounds more like you've had chronic fatigue, and if anything, you've just been suffering a chronic adverse drug reaction. So to hear that was pretty crippling. So kind of now I'm on the journey of kind of overcoming the chronic fatigue. But so I was told then, no working out, Melissa. You are not allowed to work out. You're not allowed to exercise. And I was just like, I was just starting to feel, I forgot how much I love to move my body, and I was really missing it. So I came up with something new. So I didn't feel so sorry for myself. And instead of doing workouts, I now do work-ins. And so I'll quite often say, to my family, have you done a work-in today? And so to feel like I was still physically moving, and so now I've incorporated, restorative exercise, so things that will restore my health and restore my body so that one day I can do a workout again, but for now it's just work-ins.
So what kind of things do you do?
So depending on my health on the day, I always try to implement something. So it could be doing an extremely gentle Pilates class, extremely gentle restorative yoga class, stretching, meditation, mindfulness, that's doing a work-in. I think, if you're a creative person, artwork can be, a beautiful mindfulness way to restore yourself and to feel like you are actually being productive, because sometimes we feel like we're making progress if we're doing things, and if you can't go for a run, you can do a work-in, and you can be just working on just restoring yourself. Yeah.
So
Melissa, I saw that graphic that you had on the website, which is a very cool graphic. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
So I think that's a really nice summary of all the things that people can do to sort of get their whole life, all balanced out. And if you guys haven't seen it, go to keepinmindproject.com and you'll be able to see all the lovely things that are in Melissa's head and life at the moment. So it's really cool.
Did you draw
that?
Did you draw that yourself?
Yes, that was my concept, yeah. I guess that kind of image I started to discover, because, I was always waiting for the answer, and I thought it was going to be one, and I was waiting for for God to give me this amazing miracle where I'd be like bang and I'd be well, or the doctor would give me the drug and I'd be well, or my husband would help me, and I wanted everyone to help me, and I became why isn't everyone helping me find the answer? And so that imagery came from me discovering that it's not one thing, it's everything, and
so true.
It's doing your daily work-ins. It's, it's your nutrition. It's having the right support. It's, doing something you love, involving creativity into your life. It's, it's not one thing. It's moving your body, and, all of those things put together. That's what wellness looks like, really. Yeah.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So, Melissa, how's your family doing at the moment since you put them through 12 years of all that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a journey. One day I had a really selfish moment, and this is probably not really good mothering, and I said to one of my boys, I don't know what I wanted to hear, but I said to one of them, if you could change anything about Mummy, what would it be? This was a while ago and I was still sick. What would it be? And he said to me, well, I know probably the right answer is I'm supposed to say that you don't have bipolar, which I still thought I had them, and that you've never been sick. But if that didn't happen, we wouldn't be who we are, and we're different to other families, and we have something that they don't, and maybe we wouldn't have it if we didn't go through this. And this was great insight. I don't know, he was maybe 12 at the time. And so how is my family? We're all the richer for it.
Yeah.
And they have an empathy and insight that they would never have otherwise. And I wish I didn't have to happen, and I still grieve those beautiful years with my boys and the things that we did miss out on and lose. But I just can't allow myself to go into that place of too deep into grief and anger, because it's not healthy, and we've lost enough time. It's already
happened, so it's not like you can go back there and change it anyway. So
exactly.
you found the right path now, and it's working for you. And luckily, you've had that amazing support from everyone around you. Like when you mentioned how your dad just went into the hospital and basically took you out, like that. How important is that, to have someone in your life that was able to be strong enough for you and to trust enough that you'll be okay, and did that for you, against all the medical advice that was being given at the time. So, it's such a powerful story, Melissa, and it really does give hope. And Joe and I also agree with you, because her and I have spoken about this so many times. Like, we wouldn't be talking to you now had it not been for our own health misadventures as well, and all the things that have gone wrong for us, that we wouldn't be here today, and we're very grateful to be here. So you bringing up, how many children do you have now?
I have three teenage boys.
Boys, wow.
Yeah.
All right. So you recovered just in time.
I just love that article you have on your blog that you wrote for Mother's Day. That was just beautiful, about the way that your boys support you and love you, and how they've been through so much. Do you want to just mention a little bit about that quickly?
Yeah, well, no one asks, when you've got mums who are sick, no matter what the sickness really, whether it be mental illness or whatever kind of illness, they're the unsung heroes, these kids. They're the ones who are the carers, and they didn't have a choice. They're not a spouse that can walk out. They're not a friend who can stop visiting. They're there whether they like it or not, and they are quite often the carers for their parents, for their mums, and they're the ones who go without a lot, and no one really acknowledges that and talks about it. So that's why for Mother's Day, I just wanted to acknowledge them and just how amazing they are, and the hearts that they've come out of it. I think I mentioned to you, Joe, a little story about one of my boys. We were down at the local shop, and the lady serving us was being a cow. That's the truth of it. Anyway, and I, bad mummy. And I leant over to my little boy at the time, and I said, oh my gosh, what a cow. What's this woman's problem? And he pulled me down and whispered in my ear and said, Mummy, we don't know her story. And, would he have had that insight had he not been what he'd been through? So they're coming out as these radiant, beautiful humans.
Yeah, they're just going to be beautiful adults, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They really are. They're teenage boys, so we still have our moments. But but I think they're going to be okay. We're going to be okay, and I think that's the message I want people to know when they're if those of you that are in that moment of crisis right now where you're just thinking, there's no way we're going to recover, my family's going to be damaged, you're going to be okay. You'll be surprised how resilient these kids are and how clever they are, and that there's going to be purpose for them as well, that this is not going to be a waste. Those years aren't wasted in that, in that trial. There's going to be purpose to it. So, and I mean, how my marriage survived.
Yeah, I actually wondered that.
Do you know what? I'll tell you something really beautiful, and that is we found out ages ago that apparently 94% of marriages with a bipolar spouse fail. That's a big statistic, 94%. And I would be psychotic, I would be crazy, I would be yelling abuse at my husband, and he used to turn around to me. Now, he's a big Polish man, and he used to turn around to me and say, 6%, Melissa, 6%. And that's all he would say to me and walk away or whatever. And basically he was, saying to me, nah, we're not going to be the statistic. We're not going to be what's considered the norm. We are that 6%. And I think, I used to say to him, I just need a more sensitive man who's just going to, understand and what have you. And he said, no, you need a strong one, because a sensitive man would have been long gone.
Yeah. But that's true.
Yeah, so we survived, and we're the 6%, and wow, that's a miracle in itself.
Right.
Yeah, so
beautiful story.
Yeah,
isn't it?
So Melissa, what's your mission now? What are you doing? Tell us what you're thinking about in terms of the future.
Yeah, well, I guess as I said earlier, once you kind of step out and follow, that inner voice, things will just happen and doors will just open. And it's like me being on this podcast. Oh my goodness, I could barely string a word together 12 months ago,
Yeah.
But you just be true to what you feel, you're called to do, and doors will open. And then it takes all the stress out of it as well. You don't have to make things happen. And so at the moment, I'm just kind of still following that heart. And for years, I've been wanting to write a book, and just kind of, I've always, I found bits of paper from when I was in hospital, and all these little bits of paper and pieces of my journey. Lucky I did have those pieces of paper, because trust me, after nearly 50 ECT treatments, memory's a bit impaired. Yeah, and so anyway, I kept saying to my husband, I'd really like to write a book. And about 12 months ago, before I'd really even had this realisation about the misdiagnosis and chronic fatigue, I said to him, I'd still really like to write a book, but I don't have my ending yet. I'm still waiting for my miracle. Wham, bam, this is the answer, And
you're waiting for that one thing.
Yeah, the one thing. I still hadn't got I still hadn't grasped it's not one thing, it's everything. And but he said something really powerful to me, and he said, Melissa, maybe you're missing it. Maybe you're missing the whole point of what a miracle is and what true healing is. And he said, maybe what you're supposed to write about, and maybe the miracle of this story is how you can be joyful and how you can live a life regardless of not getting, that miracle. It's about, talking about how you can live today even when everything's not perfect, and how you can survive, and how you can have a good marriage, and you can still raise great kids even when it's imperfect. So that was really powerful, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a total shift for me, and so that it's amazing when I had that shift. I still didn't know about the misdiagnosis and what have you, because a lot's happened in 12 months. And I said, okay, I'm just going to start writing this, and I'm just going to believe that, I don't have to actually have that, the happy ever after ending. But as I just stepped out, it seems that has happened anyway, and I have, I'm still on a journey. But, yeah, it's just sort of starting to make sense. And so, yes, I'm writing a book. And yeah, it's been...
How's it going?
Yeah, well, actually, I've just, for Mother's Day, my gorgeous kids and hubby, they actually went and set a caravan up at a beautiful beach near where we live. And they set the caravan up and said, okay, Mum, it's time, go and write.
How awesome
and
is
so
that?
Yeah, so I've been away for 3 weeks just writing and swimming in the ocean and being completely self-indulgent. The first probably week and a half actually was quite painful and I was hating it because I had to write about some really ugly things and but I've kind of got through all that yuck now, and so now I can start to write about the joy and the hope and the purpose. So, yeah, so it's coming along well.
That's amazing. What a great family.
Melissa, I'm really interested in one thing that you said earlier, like right at the start. You were talking about how, like, throughout all this, there was just something inside you that just wasn't being affected almost by all this stuff. That you sort of knew that you'd get better, or you had this kind of, you know, there was all this stuff happening. Like, and to me, like, I find in most people that I meet, well, you know, even in my own experience, like, even though there's always, like, sometimes could be a whirlwind of thought and all these things happening, that there's something inside that's just really peaceful and calm about it all. And I'm just really interested, is this place still with you now, and is this the place that you feel that you're coming from more and more, or what are your feelings about that kind of voice inside you that sort of kept you going?
Yeah, I think the clearer my thinking comes, the more I can hear it, and the more clarity I have for what to do with it. But I never signed up in my heart for what they were telling me I was. And although it was happening to me and I couldn't control it, in my heart I never signed up to say, I'm accepting that is who I am. I'm not going to I'm not going to live in that label of, okay, so now I'm bipolar and, you know, that's completely who I am. And I just, in my heart, just knew I wasn't going to settle. And I didn't have any answers or any knowing how, but I guess also I truly believed that there was going to be purpose, and I don't know how else to expand on that, but I just knew somehow there would be a reason for this, that this was not, you know, that bad stuff doesn't happen, you know, for no reason, you know. It's called growing pains for a reason, and you grow because things get better, and you grow because, you know, something beautiful grows. And I guess even I can remember sitting in group therapy and, you know, in the psych hospital, and everyone was kind of talking about how horrible their life was, and there was no hope. Trust me, psych hospitals are not places are full of hope. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know, I'm probably the happiest depressed person here, because I could still recognise that my life was beautiful and I had this great husband and this great life, and I could recognise all of that. For some reason I was waking up sad, and for some reason my mind was being altered, but I knew that wasn't who I am, and I wasn't going to accept that that was who I am. And I knew there was a great life. I just had to try and work out how I could get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So did that answer your question? I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, this is something that I wanted you to touch on, because I feel that place is in all of us, and sometimes it goes unrecognized, and I'm hoping that the audience that are listening, if they don't feel it, maybe they should just take a moment to sort of be quiet and look for that place, because it is inside us. That kind of internal voice that is okay. There's a part of us that is okay throughout this. And, you know, even if the mind is just going crazy and the whole world is falling apart, there's that voice. And, you know, this is what I loved about hearing your story, is it kind of reinforced that feeling that I have, that all of us are centered in peace somehow, and that life happens and all these things will come at us, but inside us there's this voice that sort of knows a little bit better, you know, that sort of keeps us going. The more in touch we are with that voice, the more healing comes to us. So, yeah, that did answer my question.
Yeah, because we're more than just a bunch of flesh, aren't we? We're not just walking around bones and, you know, with blood pumping. There's something in us that's more, and I believe in a spirit, and you know, we just got to start listening to that. We all have it. You're right. We all have it, and it's nurturing that. Yeah.
So this is, I just wanted the listeners to sort of look for that place inside them. That place will give them courage and hope and peace. And if they're going through this kind of difficult situation that you're going through, that same place will help them as well. So that was just what I was hoping for. And I loved hearing that was part of your story as well. That's really it for me. I just don't even know what to say anymore. It was such an amazing story to hear from you, and I feel really grateful to have had you on the podcast with us, and for our listeners to hear what you had to say, and to see that your journey had so much beauty in it despite all the pain. Really, I'm so happy for you that you're here now doing what you do and feeling the way that you do. So really great stuff.
Really looking forward to that book.
Jo, do you have more questions for Melissa?
No, I think we've talked about most things, but I'm really looking forward to that book.
I'm getting there. I'm working really hard.
No pressure.
It's almost done.
No pressure. But it's beautiful that you could spend the time to, be alone and write. That's so good.
What a beautiful gift!
Beautiful. And for all of those of you listening, pop over to Melissa's blog. So it's called, what's the URL? Sorry?
keepinmindproject.com.
Okay, keepinmindproject.com. And have a read of the articles on there, yes?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to mention that before we go, you have to talk about your gut healing program. I didn't want to...
Yes.
Hang up before.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to sign up for. I've got a few more days for the early bird.
I get so caught up in the people that we're talking to, I forget about that. But exciting news for those of you who haven't heard. My gut health program is out and about. So at the moment, there's an early bird price until June the 3rd. And we're just finishing adding a few more things to it. But you can go ahead and get started. There's plenty of videos and lots of things to read, and you can start working on some recipes. And the last module that's coming soon is full of recipe ebooks and meal plans and things to help you with the GAPS intro diet. And for those of you who are not doing GAPS but are just interested in eating healthier, you can just take the ebooks and pick out things that you want to do and make your own meal plan with the blank meal planner and just get some ideas from it, really. But I just really wanted to help people who are on a healing journey and find the whole idea of cooking a bit overwhelming. So simplifying it and helping people with that. So, So the website is gaps.quirkycooking.com.au. You can have a look at that.
And another thing that I want to talk about is the cooking classes that Jo and I are doing in July.
Yes.
So on the 28th and 29th of July, Jo is going to be visiting Sydney, and we've booked the Sydney Seafood School for cooking classes, and we've already sold out the Friday night, but we've got some spots left on Thursday night and Friday for lunch. And the cooking class isn't going to be like a normal cooking class where we're just going to show you some stuff and that's it. We will actually be demoing the dishes that we'll be cooking, but then afterwards we'll break into groups, and Jo and I will go from one group to the other, and we will talk to you and show you how to do these recipes. And after that, we're going to sit down and eat all the food that we made, all of us together, and chat about how to change this world for make it a better place, and so we can all have healthier children and healthier people all around, and how to look after all the people that we love that need this kind of assistance in their life. So we're going to be talking about paleo cooking and GAPS and all sorts of whole foods issues, and we'd love to see you there. So if you want to sign up, go to quirkycooking.com.au/shop, and you'll be able to see the 2 classes that are still available for booking. Yeah. And that's it from me. So I just wanted to thank Melissa before we go, and really, really love this episode. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on to the show.
Yes, thank you, Melissa.
It's been an absolute honour, and thank you for helping me find and show the purpose. So thanks for being part of that. It's exciting.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for listening to A Quirky Journey. We hope you enjoyed it and are finding it encouraging and helpful. If you have questions or comments, you can post them on our Facebook pages. So I think you have a Facebook page, Melissa?
Yes, I do. Keep in Mind Project, yes.
And you can also obviously post on the Wellness Couch. You can post comments there or in my chat group. And there's a Quirky Gaps group if any of you are interested in gut healing diets. And we'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. And there's also lots more podcasts on our show that you might like to listen to if you haven't already. So thank you again, Melissa. We really appreciate you coming on. And we'll keep in touch, and you can let us know when your book's ready and we'll get you back on and talk about that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.